The rain poured down in heavy sheets across downtown Portland, turning the streets into rivers of rushing water. Marcus Thompson hurried along the sidewalk, his worn jacket pulled tight against the cold November wind. After another exhausting 12-hour shift at the warehouse, all he wanted was to get home to his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who was staying with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, for the evening. Money had been tight for the past 3 years, since his wife Sarah passed away from cancer. The medical bills had drained their savings, and raising Emma alone on his warehouse worker's salary meant every dollar counted. Marcus often skipped meals to ensure Emma had everything she needed for school, and their small apartment was barely affordable even with his overtime hours. As he turned the corner near the old cathedral, something caught his eye. Huddled against the stone steps was a figure in tattered clothing, shivering violently in the storm. Most people would have walked past, too focused on getting out of the rain to notice someone else's suffering. But Marcus had learned something about compassion during his wife's illness. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could mean everything. The woman looked to be in her early 30s, with matted brown hair and clothes that had seen better days. She was clearly homeless and appeared to be sick, coughing harshly into her hands. Without hesitation, Marcus approached her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, crouching down beside her. The woman looked up with startled green eyes, clearly not expecting anyone to stop. I'm fine," she whispered, though her violent shivering suggested otherwise. "No, you're not," Marcus said gently. "When's the last time you ate something hot?" She couldn't remember. It had been days, maybe longer. The streets were unforgiving, and she had been surviving on whatever scraps she could find. Her name was Victoria, though she hadn't told anyone that in months. On the streets, names didn't matter much. Marcus looked at this stranger and saw someone who needed help. Despite his own financial struggles, he couldn't walk away. "Come on," he said, extending his hand. "Let's get you somewhere warm." Victoria hesitated. She had learned not to trust people, especially men who approached her on the streets. Too many bad experiences had taught her to be cautious. But there was something different about Marcus, a genuine kindness in his eyes that she hadn't seen in a long time. "I don't have any money," she said quietly. "I'm not asking for any," Marcus replied. "I'm just asking you to let me help." Against her better judgment, Victoria took his hand and let him help her up. Marcus led her to a nearby diner that stayed open late. The warm air hit them as they entered, and Victoria visibly relaxed for the first time in weeks. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Carol, gave them a skeptical look. Victoria's appearance clearly marked her as homeless, and many establishments weren't welcoming to people in her situation. But Marcus smiled warmly and asked for a table for 2. "Order whatever you want," Marcus told Victoria as they sat down. He was mentally calculating his wallet's contents. He had about $30, which was supposed to cover groceries for the next few days, but seeing the grateful look in Victoria's eyes, he knew he was making the right choice. Victoria ordered soup and a sandwich, eating slowly as if she couldn't believe the food was real. As they sat together, she began to open up about her life on the streets. She had been homeless for 8 months, she told him, after a series of unfortunate events left her with nowhere to go. She didn't share the full story, not yet, but Marcus could tell there was more to her situation than she was letting on. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight?" Marcus asked. Victoria shook her head. The shelters were often full, and she had learned to avoid some of the more dangerous areas where the homeless congregated. Marcus made a decision that would change both of their lives. "You can sleep on our couch tonight," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm and dry." Victoria stared at him in disbelief. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." "Because everyone deserves basic human dignity," Marcus replied simply, and because I hoped someone would do the same for Emma if she ever needed help. That night, Victoria slept on Marcus and Emma's small couch, the first real sleep she had gotten in months. Emma, curious about their guest, had asked innocent questions about why Victoria looked so sad. Marcus had simply told his daughter that Victoria was a friend who needed help, and Emma had immediately offered to share her favorite blanket. Over the next few weeks, Victoria began to recover her strength. Marcus had insisted she stay with them temporarily, despite the strain it put on their already tight budget. Victoria helped around the apartment, cooking meals and helping Emma with her homework while Marcus worked his long shifts. What Marcus didn't know was that Victoria was harboring a significant secret. Her full name was Victoria Margaret Ashworth, and she was the sole heir to the Ashworth Industries fortune. Her grandfather, William Ashworth, had built a business, empire worth over $50 million before his death 5 years earlier. Victoria had run away from her wealthy family 2 years ago after a bitter dispute over her grandfather's will. Her parents and extended family had expected her to take over the family business immediately, but Victoria had wanted to pursue social work and help disadvantaged communities. The family had seen this as a betrayal of their legacy and had essentially disowned her when she refused to conform to their expectations. Pride and stubbornness had kept Victoria from returning home. Even when she ended up on the streets, she had convinced herself that she would rather struggle honestly than compromise her values for money. But living with Marcus and Emma had shown her something important about the kind of person she wanted to be. Marcus's selfless generosity, despite his own struggles, had touched something deep within Victoria's heart. Here was a man who worked himself to exhaustion to provide for his daughter, who gave his last $30 to feed a stranger, who opened his home without asking for anything in return. His kindness wasn't calculated or conditional, it came from a genuine desire to help others. Meanwhile, Marcus had grown fond of Victoria, though he knew little about her past. She was intelligent, kind with Emma, and had a way of bringing light into their small apartment. Emma adored her, often asking if Victoria could stay forever. The truth came out quite by accident. Victoria had been living with them for almost 2 months when a private investigator hired by her family tracked her down. The man appeared at Marcus's door one evening, asking about Victoria's whereabouts. "Are you Victoria Margaret Ashworth?" the investigator asked when Victoria came to the door. The color drained from Victoria's face. Marcus, standing behind her, was confused by the formal use of what he had assumed was a fake last name. That night, Victoria finally told Marcus the complete truth about her identity and her family's wealth. She explained about the inheritance, the family expectations, and her decision to walk away from it all. Marcus was stunned. Here he had been struggling to buy groceries while housing someone who was technically worth millions of dollars. But rather than feeling angry or betrayed, he felt proud of Victoria's integrity and her willingness to stand up for her principles. "What will you do now?" Marcus asked. Victoria had been thinking about that very question, living with Marcus, and Emma had shown her that wealth didn't have to corrupt a person's values. She could use her inheritance to help people like Marcus, hard-working individuals who deserved better opportunities. "I'm going to claim what's mine," Victoria said with determination, "but I'm going to use it the way my grandfather would have wanted, to help people." Victoria reconnected with her family's lawyers and claimed her inheritance. The family was initially resistant, but Victoria's experiences on the streets had given her a strength and conviction they had never seen before. She was no longer the uncertain young woman who had run away. She was someone who had learned what really mattered in life. True to her word, Victoria used her newfound wealth wisely. She paid off Marcus's debts, including the remaining medical bills from his wife's treatment. She established a scholarship fund for single parents, trying to improve their education and job prospects. She also founded a non-profit organization focused on providing transitional housing and job training for homeless individuals. Marcus was initially uncomfortable accepting Victoria's financial help, but she convinced him that it wasn't charity, it was gratitude. "You saved my life," she told him. "You showed me what real generosity looks like." The story became even more meaningful when Marcus and Victoria realized their relationship had evolved beyond friendship. They had fallen in love, brought together by circumstances, but bonded by shared values and mutual respect. 2 years later, Marcus and Victoria were married in a simple ceremony attended by Emma, Mrs. Chen, and a few close friends. Emma officially gained the loving stepmother she had always wanted, and Victoria found the family she had been searching for without realizing it. Their story became a reminder that kindness is never wasted, that the most important wealth is found in human connections, and that sometimes helping others is the best way to help ourselves. Marcus had pulled a stranger from the streets without expecting anything in return, and in doing so had transformed not just her life, but his own as well.